everyone, this is Taro and Usagi here is here too. In today's video I want to talk a little bit about my anniversary in Japan because it's been 10 years since I moved to Japan. And I actually don't even remember the correct date I moved to Japan. I believe it's around the 23rd of September. But I'm actually not even sure. But it's around that time, so I decided to make this video to talk about my experiences of living and working in Japan. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this video and yeah, get to know me a little bit better maybe. So first of all, I've got some questions, like I asked some questions in my community tab, and I think I got a question on Discord as well. So I might go ahead and answer those. Yes, I got quite a few. One question was, how did you learn Japanese so well? So I moved to Japan as a student. Sorry, Usagi. Let's do it like that. I felt bad for him. So I moved to Japan as a student. I was a language school student for about 1.5 years. And then after graduating language school, I went to a business school in Japan, which is called Senmongakko, which is basically a vocational school. And I did 2 years of global business, studying global business at that school. And that's how I learned Japanese more or less. And of course I worked several part-time jobs during that time to just practice speaking Japanese, and dating a Japanese national also helped with my Japanese, since my boyfriend and I, we usually speak Japanese. Yeah, so that's how I learned Japanese basically. So I wish I could tell you that I studied all night long and stuff like that, but I was really fortunate to be able to go to school in Japan, and that's how I learned most of the basic Japanese that I speak. And another question I got, do you see yourself staying in Japan long term, or would you want to live in other countries too? If yes, which countries would you consider? That's actually a really good question. Um, I've been in Japan for so long that I would actually consider it my home. Like, I've never, like, all my adult life, I moved to Japan when I was 22, so all my adult life I've been living in Japan, and I actually don't know anything about living in another country besides Japan. Like, even in my own home country, I don't know how to rent an apartment in Germany. I don't know how taxes work in Germany. I know it sounds stupid, but everything I know is how to live in Japan. So deciding to move to another country, whether it's my home country or any other country, might be really hard for me because I'm so used to living in Japan and living with the Japanese system that I don't know, I don't think, I mean, the idea is in the back of my head, especially because my boyfriend does not want to live in Japan. But yeah, I've never given too many thoughts about it. Rather than living in another country, I would prefer to travel to a lot of different countries. I think that would be more fun for me. Or like staying 1 or 2 months in one country and then moving on to the next one. I think something like that would be nice, but yeah. How was your first time in Japan? How did this come about, and what influenced your decision to want to live in this country? Um, so My first time visiting Japan was in 2012, so 12 years ago. Um, and shout out to my friend who I visited Japan with. I had an amazing time with her, and I know she watches my vlogs. Um, so yeah, my friend and I, we both were into Japanese fashion when we were younger, but then around 18, 19, 20, 21, we kind of both lost interest in Japan or Japanese fashion and we didn't really bother with that. So, but we wanted to go on a holiday together. So, we were looking into places to go and places to visit, and we were thinking of going to the US, or I don't know, we were looking at a list of different countries. And at that time, because of what happened in 2011 in Japan, unfortunately, the flights to Japan and everything were really cheap compared to the US, so we decided to visit Japan. While she was having a hard time in Japan, I believe, I was really enjoying it. It was different from what I imagined, because I only knew Japan from documentaries and anime and manga, obviously. So it was different than what I imagined originally, but I ended up really, I don't know what it was, but I ended up really liking it. I can't tell you the exact feeling I felt, but it was just like a connection I had in that moment with this country that made me want to go back. And the year after my first holiday, I went back for a month with a different friend. And then I went back for a third time before ending up moving to Japan. So I visited Japan 3 times before moving, and every single time I had the urge of staying here and not wanting to leave. Like, once my departure came close, I felt like crying, and I was crying a lot, and I didn't want to leave. And that's kind of the moment where I knew I wanted to stay here and I wanted to live here. I think that's what triggered my decision to move to Japan. Like this feeling of not wanting to leave and just feeling this strong connection I had. Like I said, I cannot even tell what exactly it was. Like, was it the culture? Was it living my dream? Was it, I can't really like put it into words, but I felt such a strong connection. And yeah, I just didn't want to leave. So I think that's what triggered the reason of me moving to Japan. And I have to say, I was really naive when I moved to Japan. Um, I didn't really think about my future living here. I graduated school in Germany. I went to a vocational school in Germany. I got my degree before moving to Japan, and I thought everything would just, I don't know, like figure itself out. Like, I had planned to go to language school and then I had planned to go to university in Japan, but because of my school degree, it's a little bit complicated. If you're from Germany, you kind of understand. Um, but for people outside of Germany, school degrees in Germany can be a little bit complicated because we have so many different degrees. And for my German listeners, I have a Fachabitur, which is basically a vocational high school degree. So it's not a regular high school degree. And because of that, I could not enroll into a regular university. I could only enroll into Japanese Senmongakko, which is a vocational school. So it's not on the same level as a university degree, um, but it's a degree you can use to find jobs in Japan, basically. So, but yeah, before I moved to Japan, I had nothing figured out. I remember I was telling my teachers in school when they asked me what I was going to do, like, oh, I'm just going to become an English teacher in Japan, like stuff like that is what I said. And now looking back at it, I was just so naive because I had nothing figured out. And I would do a lot of things different if I could go back in time. Like, I don't regret the decisions I made because I cannot change them anymore. but I would do a lot of things different. And that's something I recommend to a lot of people thinking about moving to Japan is like get a proper degree. Um, I know a lot of people who are interested in Japan, and I'm not saying anything negative about this subject, but for example, Japanese studies as a university degree, there's so many ways you can study Japanese nowadays that you don't need that particular degree um, to be able to work in Japan if you're able to go to a language school. I know this is not for everyone, and I know not everyone has the funds to do it, but if you can study something like programming, IT, marketing, something that distinguishes you from a lot of different people in Japan. Because right now the job market in Japan is really, really difficult and really, really hard. And the more skills you have, the easier you will have it. And yeah, I know, sorry if I'm drifting off, but like I said, I would have done a lot of things different. I would have studied something probably IT related, looking back in Germany, and then come as a language student with a proper degree. Um, I mean, at the end of the day, it did work out for me. I was really fortunate that I could afford going to language school and going to a school in Japan because those are not cheap. I mean, they were cheaper 10 years ago, but I know they're really, really expensive, and I know how fortunate I was to be able to go, and I'm really thankful for that. But looking back, I would not have done it the way I did. So maybe that's a lesson for some of you guys who are thinking of going to Japan but don't really know how. My recommendation would be, oh, I got a message. Sorry, guys. So my recommendation would be study something that is going to be useful in the future, that you can use in both your own country and Japan, and then come if you can as a language school student, or take Japanese as a side subject or something like that in university, and don't just focus on the language is my recommendation. Sorry, I'm drifting off. Um, um, that's a really good question, actually. Do you find it easy to make Japanese friends who are into the same thing as you, such as anime, BL, etc.? To be honest, yes. I think it makes it really, really easy. I know there's this stigma around being friends with Japanese people, that it's so hard to make friends or be friends with them. And I think you have to distinguish the level of friendship you have with them. Like, if you want to have a really deep connection with a person and really become close friends, it's going to be a lot harder, but not impossible. Like, I had really close friends. Um, but if you want just to have a friendship where you go to cafes together, or like talk about the newest anime or the newest manga, then it's really easy, honestly. Um, in most of the cases I'm actually the one who does not respond to messages very well. So I'm actually the one who became Japanese, because my Japanese friends, they usually message me and I'm the one who takes like 2 weeks to answer. So that's really bad. Um, but for example, just an example, the other day I went to a collab cafe, and I went by myself. And since the cafe was fully booked, I had to sit on the opposite side of a stranger. So it was a little bit awkward because there was nothing in between us, so we had to just basically look at each other while we were eating. Since we sat together for about 1.5 hours, it would have been awkward not to at least say something. So we did some small talk. We talked about what character we liked, and when we opened blind goods, we congratulated each other on getting the characters we liked, and we talked about the food. And it's, as long as you're open to the conversation and have a topic to share, I don't think it's very hard to make friends with Japanese people. I know a lot of foreigners complain about that, but if you have a common hobby, it's not difficult at all. Like, I had so many situations where, for example, I became friends with a person like I have a different, I have a secret Twitter account for my trades. So I trade a lot of items on Twitter. It's called Torihiki in Japanese. Um, so whenever I get a character I'm not a fan of, or I want my favorite character, for example, Chikawa is now a big trade reason for me. Like whenever I get another character other than Usagi, I just usually would trade that character. And sometimes I would meet up with that person and just like hand it in person because it's cheaper and you don't have to pay um, the shipping fees. And sometimes we would just chat and have some small talk, or like, oh, I'm really grateful, thank you so much, I really wanted this, I bought like 10 packs and I didn't get them. And then that's like a conversation starter, and then depending on the mood of the other person, they would react that way. They would talk back to you, and talk back not in a bad way, like just giving an answer, and you kind of would start a conversation. And that's how I met a lot of other people as well. And I exchanged my contact with them, and we went to cafes together, not for Chikawa particularly, but for BL cafes and everything like that. So that's a really good icebreaker and conversation starter, to be honest. So I never found it hard to make friends in Japan if I wanted to. I'm really bad at it. So most of the time it's actually my fault. But yeah, I never found it hard, to be honest. It's, I think most of the time it's people complaining who don't have, oh my god, that sounds so mean, but who don't have any hobbies. I know that sounds so mean. But if you have a hobby and an interest and a passion to share, you will find people to connect with. Like really, you will find a community as long as you're open. So yeah, that's it on that. um, so we already had um, the topic of how I decided to move to Japan, but an additional question was if the process was as hard as it seems to be. Since I was a language school student, it wasn't hard because I didn't go with any agency. I just looked up language schools by myself. I think nowadays there are a lot of agencies that offer that enroll you in language schools and provide you an apartment with, and help you get settled in Japan. But 10 years ago, it was not really common. So, what I did, I asked my friend who went to language school, like what school she went to, and I just messaged the school and I enrolled through email. And then I just looked for a foreign friendly apartment in Japan. There were only a handful of those. Like I think now the options are huge compared to 10 years ago. But and I a month before moving to Japan, I just requested that apartment. It was harder for my mobile phone, but then I asked friends. I think once you have friends, you can always ask your friends or people you know who live in Japan. So that's what I did. So for me, and my language school obviously helped me a lot. They helped me set up a bank account. So for me personally, it was not a hard step because I had my visa figured out when I moved to Japan because I came as a language school student. So I think the hardest part is to have your visa figured out, like what type of visa you're coming with. I think that's the hardest part, but if you come as a student, it's actually not that hard because your school does most of the paperwork. If you come with a working visa, I think it's harder, but I'm not sure, to be honest. But I don't think it was really hard, to be honest. I don't think you need an agency. I think you can do it by yourself if you want to. Of course, going through an agency might be easier, but it's not impossible to do it yourself. Like I did it myself, and it was. I mean, look at me. It's fine, I think. And then another question we had was, what problems do you have there, and what benefits as a foreigner are there? Mm, what problems? I mean, for those of you who've been following me for a long time, I think Work in Japan is really hard. I don't really like the working system in Japan. I don't think it's a good work environment wise. Um, Other than that, and mental health support, I think mental health support is pretty bad. I would say, I mean, I'm not an expert at this. This is just from observing my surroundings. I would say the education system is not good, and as someone from Europe, um, I would say the general health system is not good. But as someone from, I think, the US, they would probably think differently and would probably judge things differently compared to me. So I think it's really hard to say. But I don't think, besides work, I don't think I have encountered many difficulties as a foreigner. Especially if you speak Japanese, things become really easy for you. And I feel like most of the things people complain about is due to the lack of the language ability. So for me, as someone who speaks Japanese, I don't know, conversational in Japanese. I don't know. I don't really have a lot of problems besides my working situation and the lack of mental health support I feel like there is in Japan. Um, and I do most of my paperwork and my documents, I do it by myself, so I feel like it's okay. I think the biggest struggle is to get a visa, like a working visa, and I think the thing I'm always worried about is my visa. And oh, does my visa get extended? Do I get a new visa? Does it get renewed? I think those are my biggest stress points in Japan, other than work. Work, the work environment is not good in Japan. But yeah, those would be my biggest concerns. Other than that, I think I live a really privileged life in Japan. Compared to other people, I don't think I can complain a lot. I'm very fortunate and I'm really grateful for that. But yeah, those are the only things I would say were like troublesome for me, and I wish things would go better in the future when it comes to that. Then we have what made you want to start vlogging? That's a good question too. I actually thought it would be fun to share my otakatsu life, like my weeb life that I've been living in Japan. And that's how I started with my channel. Like if you watch my early videos, it's mostly about going to anime and manga events and vlogging about that and my manga hauls. It's not so much about myself as a person. However, that changed when things at work became really hard and stressful, and I felt like I just need to not vent, but I feel like I had this urge to share my situation, to see if I could find people who are in a similar situation as I was and would understand me, because I felt so misunderstood and I was wondering if there was something wrong with me as a person, or if everything around me was wrong. Like I did not know what was right or wrong anymore, and I felt like I needed an outlet, and the only option I could find in that moment besides my friends and my family was YouTube. So I decided to show more realness and how life in Japan actually is, rather than only showing the nice parts and the good things. So I feel like that's what really made me want to vlog more about my daily life and the person I am, rather than just hiding behind the good things and the positive things of Japan. My old vlogs are still a memory. I still like them. I love them. I made them with a lot of love. All my vlogs are made with a lot of love and thought. So I don't regret is a hard word, but I don't look back and think, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I rather just like evolve with the new style I chose to do and just try to share more things about my life and about living in Japan, which can sometimes be really hard and not easy and not as romantic as some people might show it. Like living in Japan or living in any foreign country as a foreigner is hard. It doesn't matter if it's Japan or Germany or any other country. living abroad as a foreigner is always going to be hard, and it's always going to be a challenge because the country doesn't adjust to you, you have to adjust to the country. And I feel like a lot of people forget that. I mean, I know it's annoying that some things are like this in Japan, but it just can't be helped. That's how it is, and you choose that. That's what I wanted to show with my vlogs, and that's why I changed my style of vlogging. I just didn't want to show the good things only. I just wanted to talk about some things that I struggle with, or just the reality of how it is to live and actually work here as a regular person and not an influencer or someone who doesn't have to work a 9 to 5. That's what I wanted to show with my vlogs, and I hope I'm doing a good job to give you an insight how it is to work here and to live here as a regular person, as a working human. And yeah, I hope I can be as real as I can, because that's what I wanted to do, and that's why I changed my style of making videos. Another big thing why I started vlogging was that I could not relate to any content creators in Japan because they were just living in such a different world compared to me. Like, I don't know, whenever I saw videos of a typical day in my life, and I see them, like, no hate to them, it's their life and I'm glad they can experience that. But then I see videos like, oh, a typical day in my life, and they just travel or buy houses or just like hang out in the city on a weekday. It's like, and I'm sitting in front of my computer just working away because I'm not famous or anything. So that's something I just could not relate at all, because our lives were so, even though living in the same country, it's like your life and their life is so different. And then I would watch those vlogs and I would feel jealousy, obviously. I would love to travel on a weekday to, I don't know, Hokkaido and just enjoy nature. I would love to do that, but I can't. I'm bound to work, I'm bound to my company, I'm bound to the amount of holidays I have. So people who want to live here really have to distinguish whether your experience will be the same as that person's, because most of the people I know have to work a 9 to 5 in order to live here. And I think a lot of people get blinded by the big influencers in Japan and and they and their way of living in Japan. So with my vlogs, I just wanted to show a different side while still being fun in terms of going out on weekends and after work. I still wanted to show the reality that most of the time I'm just in my chair over there in my little office area, just working. And that's just the reality. And the last question I have is, where do you find such cute outfits? So we're not gatekeeping on this channel, so I mean, you probably saw it on my videos. I'm not the skinniest person due to my autoimmune disease and my medications I take for my mental health. I gained a lot of weight. I gained about 20 kilograms in the past 2 to 3 years, so it's a lot. And I do not fit a lot of clothes, especially here in Japan. And I was struggling with that a lot until I found this site, which is called, I think you spell it Kuretto. I don't know how you spell it, but they provide really cute oversized clothes in Japan, and their outfits are really, really pretty, and that's where I usually shop. I'm trying to lose weight again, even though I just really like food and I like eating. But yeah, this site has a lot of cute outfits, especially if you're slightly oversized or have a hard time to find clothes in Japan, or want to have really cute clothes but they don't have them in your size. This site usually has a lot of dupes of cute outfits and really popular brand clothes. So I can highly recommend them. The quality is not bad and the outfits just look really, really cute, and that's where I've been buying most of my outfits. So those were all the questions I got on my community tab and on Discord. As for my overall experience and for the future, I think I do want to stay in Japan. I love my life in Japan. I love living in Japan, and I feel like I'm probably repeating myself, but at this point I just know Japan, and I've grown in Japan as a person, and I just really like living here. So I don't think I would change. So I don't think I would move out of here anytime soon. Like I just cannot see myself moving to a different country and starting all over. But what I want to do is I want to move out of Tokyo at some point. To be honest, I don't like living in Tokyo. Like some days are fine, especially when you meet up with friends or go to cafes after work or on the weekend. Those it's fun. It's a lot of fun, but I notice that I'm just really bad with the crowds, and it gets really, really crowded on weekends, which gives me a lot of anxiety. I can see myself living in Japan for I don't know how long, but I just want to move out of Tokyo at some point, more towards the countryside. That would be like my dream at some distant future. And for the people who want to come to Japan and feel like my videos or videos of other people inspire them to move here, I would say come and make your experiences in Japan. Don't think that the country will adapt to you. You have to adapt to the country. You have to work hard. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. You're going to compete with a lot of other foreigners here who can speak better Japanese or have more skills, so you have to stand out as a person. You have to make the best out of it. Like I said, living in a foreign country is never going to be easy. It doesn't matter where you go and where you live in. You have to adapt, and you have to be aware that things people show you about the country, about Japan, it's not going to be the same as your everyday life. So overall, I think if you want to live in Japan, you should definitely go for it, but you need to be realistic. I mean, I wish things in terms of mental health and work life balance would get better. I, as of now, have to accept the way Japan is, and I have to live with that, whether I like it or not. And I feel like a lot of people coming here, they just miss that point, either because they're blinded by the lifestyle other people have and the lifestyle they cannot achieve, or because they have false expectations because of that. Once you are aware that life is going to be hard and not easy, you're going to be fine. Like, just be realistic. That's what I'm trying to say. Be realistic, and that's how I would say easiest way to live here. Just be realistic and learn to live in this country. I don't know, does it make sense what I'm even saying? I don't know. But yeah, that's something I had to learn in the past 10 years. Other than that, is becoming self independent. I've become so independent. I don't know, when I was living in Germany, I was living at home and I would just like ask my mom to do, like, I don't know, call the doctor's office for me. But now I have to do everything myself. And even though I live with my boyfriend, he's the type of person who tells me to do things myself because he does not want me to get dependent on him. Like now he's not even in Japan, so I have to do everything myself anyway. So that's how our relationship always was. Usually when I had to call or he had to call somewhere, I was the one calling. So I think Japan made me really independent, which I really appreciate. I think it's a really good learning process and way to learn how to become independent. Also, before I could not go to restaurants myself, by myself, eating out alone, I would feel so lonely. And now I just enjoy doing things by myself. I just like being alone too, and I think that's something I had to get used to as well. But yeah, I think those are the things where Japan has changed me a lot as a person and how I see Japan now after 10 years. I hope this video helped some of you guys, and I hope I could answer some questions. And I hope you can understand me and my perspective and me as a person more by watching this video. Again, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for supporting my channel and always being there. And I see you in my next video. See you guys!